before we begin, maybe I can give you a brief overview of our organization. We are a professional body dedicated to advancing environmental stewardship, sustainability, and ethical governance across Kenya. And since our founding in 2014, we have brought together environmental professionals to share knowledge, promote best practices, and contribute meaningfully to national development through research, policy engagement, and capacity building initiatives like this one. As part of our ongoing commitment to empower our members, this initiative aligns with our constitution, which calls for the promotion and advancement of the highest professional standards in environmental practice for the benefit of our nation. I am therefore pleased to welcome all of you to this capacity building session designed to equip you with the knowledge, skills, and insights needed to strengthen our professional practice and contribute effectively to environmental management in Kenya. With that, members, let us proceed to today's session on gender mainstreaming, and I will share a summarized bio of our facilitator today. Our facilitator is Dr. Elizabeth Ngumbi, a gender and research expert with EIK and Skyrockers Research and Training Institute, a trainer of trainers in women in business and digital business, with over 20 years training experience at all levels of education, basic, college, and university levels in Kenya and abroad, and has consulted for various organizations, including UNDP, Facebook, SIDA, EU, WWF, AGRA, among others. She is an expert in gender, like curriculum development, research, youth mentorship, agroecology, and community empowerment. With that overview, I welcome our facilitator to take over. Karibu sana, Dr. Elizabeth.
Yes, I'm happy to be here. And as I've said, my name is Elizabeth Ngumbi, Dr. Kaluki, and I'm happy, I'm grateful to God in everything I do. And the topic today is gender mainstreaming in the environmental impact assessment. And it is also called Environmental and Social Impact Assessment, ESIA, and the process that one needs to understand in as far as gender mainstreaming is concerned. The question we need to ask ourselves is, what is gender mainstreaming in environment and social impact assessment? And this has to do with the reason that gender concerns all community members, including men, women, children, indigenous people, people with disabilities, and any other group we can think of in our society. And this is for reasons of equity and equality. Because when we avoid some members of the community, there is imbalance in solutions that help to do the assessments and to do the solution, to bring the remedies. And you cannot achieve all the set goals if some members are not included in issues of environment. Why focus on all community members, one would ask? It's because environmental impact crisis affects everyone, despite age, gender, and all other marginalized groups who heavily depend on natural resources. For example, we know the groups we call indigenous people, they depend on the environment, and they were born and brought up in the environment, in a place like a forest, in a place where they are born and brought up, and even some of their skills are accustomed to preventing and protecting any challenges that could affect the environment. So when we talk about the indigenous people, they become very important because they have more knowledge than we even imagine about protecting the environment and the solutions we may think that are always acquired to protect and prevent further damage to our environment. Why gender in EIA or ASEA matters? Of course, we have already said environmental impact assessment helps predict and manage the effects of development projects. Men and women, and even people who are of the marginal groups like the indigenous people experience environmental impacts differently because of their roles, responsibilities, and access to resources and decision-making power. For example, we know that in our own local environments and where we come from, there are roles and responsibilities given to men, given to women, given to children, given to youth, and every other member of society. So we need to understand how that works and how that is something we need to think about when we are looking at the environment, when we are doing any impact assessment, before we do any development or before we do a major project. Integrating gender ensures that there is fair distribution of benefits. All people are taken care of. For example, if you say we want to, let's say people's land was taken because a certain dam was being developed in a certain place and land was taken, then you need to know how do you ensure fair distribution of benefits. If all people lost land, both men, women, indigenous people, how do you compensate them? How do you benefit them? All people should equally benefit. Then reduce the vulnerabilities, especially to those who are marginalized in decision-making tables. You find that many times when you say we are deliberating about land issues, for example, you have seen in our cultures and even in communities where we come from, sometimes men sit down, leaving behind women. And in those cases, we need reduce the vulnerabilities, because it doesn't mean men are more vulnerable or women are more vulnerable. All of us are vulnerable, so we need that kind of reduced vulnerabilities by ensuring even the people who are marginalized are brought in the decision-making table, so that any decision that is made because of any damage caused or any loss of property or loss of land, loss of anything or loss of livelihood, everybody is supported to avoid them becoming vulnerable afterwards. Then there is inclusive decision making. We all need to make decisions, and we know some decisions, if we only bring some few people on the table, may not be made, and even if they are made, they may be made in favor of some groups and in then disadvantaging other groups. So everyone needs to be on the table. Then there is sustainability project outcomes. When we want to become sustainable, then we need everybody on the table so that we know what are the concerns, how can we support that. Tomorrow they will not say we were left out, so we will not support this kind of a decision because we were not involved. So for any decision to be sustainable, everybody has to consent and agree to that decision, so that tomorrow they will not blame anybody when they are told don't cut trees, don't do this, don't do the other, because they were on the decision making table and they also agreed. Then there is improved community engagement and project outcomes. Here we are talking about the communities being, inclusive, bringing everybody on board, so that in engagements they are part of, and their outcomes will also be equally sustainable and accepted by all. Then how men and women are affected differently. Here we are looking at livelihoods, and we see men dominate high-risk jobs while women rely on land, water, and informal markets. It is because even today, if we want to talk about the market, majority of the mama mboga, we don't have baba mboga. Even if we have baba mboga, nobody hears of the name baba mboga. Why? Because in livelihood, women are more involved in the boga issues, the market issues, more than men, and water equally. women are more concerned with water because much of the water we consume in our rural homes, 80% of it is brought home by a woman. May she be the mother or the sister or the niece or somebody somehow is concerned about water at home, and mostly in the rural setup. Therefore, if water is disrupted when we are looking at a certain project, then we need to ask the women, how do we, help them come back to their usual way of getting water, or even better, make the situation of water better for them. But I'm not saying men should be left behind in issues of water. I'm just talking about how livelihoods and whatever roles we give to men and women, take them to certain areas that they need to be considered. Their voices are important. When we come to health, men face occupational hazards a lot. For example, majority of the people in Minjengo, they are men, not women. Women may be there, a few are joining, but still we have more men in occupational hazards that concern things like Minjengo, where they can suffer from chest problems, they can suffer injuries and the like. While women face household environmental burdens, in e.g. the making sure there is food, there is water, making sure everybody is taken care of, the caregiving duties and the like. So the health issues both men and women face are different based on the health when we look at them health-wise and what affects environment around them when big projects are in question. Then we have land compensation. Men often receive compensation of land, while women risk exclusion. For example, I was talking of Masinga Dam, where I was saying when the water occupied a lot of land, many families lost land, and when compensation came, majority of the people who were compensated were men, although we had single women who had families, but sometimes it was so hard for them to get compensation because they were being asked, whose land were you staying in? It's not your husband's, whose was it? And that was an issue, while women risk exclusion. So those questions came because many times women would be excluded in those kind of lists. And then we go to decision making. Men dominate meetings, women face cultural and time barriers. And I was explaining a case study, a case in point where a certain family, their son wanted to get married, and so they wanted to go for dowry negotiations, and then to go to the girl's place. When they got to that community, the husband to be said, we want all women to come out of this negotiation table. And the women told him, no, we can't leave the table because we are always part of those decisions. We don't leave the table ourselves as our culture. And the man was so annoyed, and they had to sort that issue because of those kind of cultural barriers where women are seen as not fit for decision making, and time barrier because they are always busy with caregiving issues and the like. And I talked about the indigenous people. Thank you, I can see we are together. I talked about the indigenous people, and I said nowadays whenever you are doing any impact assessment for either a big project coming into play or some challenge like what we had in the Rift Valley, where there was people losing their lives because of much rain and the people being swept along the river, is because indigenous people have been discovered to have a lot of knowledge on how to take care of the environment, and because they have been there, they have been eating from the forest and the like. Anybody nowadays looking at issues to do with impact assessment or environmental impact assessments, they listen to the voices of indigenous people. Why? Because of their good knowledge of taking care of the environment. For example, our Maasai people, they have always stayed with the animals like the lions, the elephants, and they have not been killing them. While some other communities, when they see them, they kill them. Why? Because they think they are intruders. While this group, They see them as part of their locality, part of their ecosystem, and they don't kill them as such. Not that they don't, but at least they know how to live with these animals all the time. And that is why we still have a lot of animals in the Mara and the like. Then we look at people with disabilities, and we are saying whenever you are doing that kind of an impact assessment, look at the people with disabilities, because their challenges are unique. They are not like for you and me. Because, for example, look at somebody in a wheelchair. If the road where they always wheel their chair along is disrupted, they will need to be carried by somebody from one place to another. But when that kind of consideration is done, then you will be careful not to disrupt the road, and even if you disrupted, make an alternative for that person so that you don't ground them. And other issues like when there are floods, you find the people who easily lose their lives are people with disabilities, because as everybody escapes the water, they most of the times leave those people who cannot escape by themselves. So it becomes like a death trap for them. And therefore, whenever you're doing that kind of an impact assessment, look at their unique challenges and try to resolve them as the solutions come to be effected. Then we have key gender responsive actions in EIA. Here we are talking about collective disaggregated data, collect sex or gender disaggregated data. I think I'm repeating this. And here is because whenever you collect such data, you look at all the groups that have any say or are represented, so that you bring their voices, you bring their concerns into the equation as you do your impact assessment. Then ensure inclusive consultation and women-only sessions. Here I want to say not only women, even youth, give them their session, children, give them their session, people with disability, give them their session, people who are indigenous, give them their session. Why? Because in those sessions, they will not fear anybody. They will say whatever it is that is of their concern, and that will help you get a lot of data based on what is their concern, so that the solution can also factor in their concerns. Then analyze gender impact on health, livelihoods, and resource access. Here we are talking about if you disrupt, let's say, our river, what will be the effect of that disrupted river to our health, to our livelihoods, and to resources access? If you have disrupted our river, and maybe that is the place we get our drinking water, we get our irrigation water, we get water for all the uses you can think of, then you have to know how do you get back to support us, because you have disrupted our water source. Our livelihoods are affected, our health is affected, our resource access is affected. How do you resolve that? Then we go to design equitable compensation and livelihood restoration. Here we are talking about equitability. We are just saying if there's any compensation, don't leave anybody who was affected out, so that you restore. Because when you do the impact, the end solution is to restore whatever was lost. Then we go to benefits of gender responsive EIA. Here I want to hear whether we are still together or you are losing me. I know I'm not in the very place that I would want to be, but earlier job, yes, but I'm happy to do this. Thank you. I can see we are together. So now I'm looking at the benefits of doing a gender responsive EIA. And we are talking about fairness, inclusion or inclusivity. Here we are talking about fairness and inclusiveness in development, because you include everybody. Whenever you are doing the development, you want to know how will it affect me, how will it benefit me, how will it, tamper with my livelihood, and then you bring fairness. Number 2, reduce conflict and social tension. Reduce conflict and social tension. Here we are talking about if you leave me behind, and I hear already you are restoring other people's challenges that you destroyed as a developer, as a development expert, as a program, and maybe my land was affected, but you are compensating others and you are leaving me out. I'll bring conflict. I'll bring social tension because I will feel left out. So when you look at the gender and responsiveness, then you reduce that kind of a challenge. Then stronger community ownership. Of course, we are saying if you include all community members in any challenge and you even make any laws, the do's and don'ts, if you include me, I will understand why the do's and don'ts are important. But if you don't include me, whatever it is, I may not be party. I may say I will not comply because I don't understand. I was not included. I was not asked anything. My concerns are not being taken care of. And therefore, we need that strong community ownership by being included. And using gender theory becomes the best way to do that. Then better environmental and project outcomes. Of course, you have heard of people who wanawekewa maji, they get tapped water but they don't use it, or they destroy the facility. Why? Because they don't feel they own it. They don't feel they are part of it. So the project outcome will be better when we are all included and asked about what we want to see, what environmental concerns we have. Then when they are resolved, then everything, the project will be a success. But if there are challenges, then your project, even if it's a very good project, will have challenges because people feel excluded. IFund inspired gender mainstreaming process in Asia, and IFund is one of the organizations that looks at gender in a very informed way. Methods that they adopt are so gender inclusive, and that's why I thought it is something we need to look at. And here we are saying IFund's approach is grounded in participatory rural development, social inclusion, and gender transformative change. The ASEA process must therefore examine not only impact, but also power and relationships. Power relationships are very important in a community. Workload distribution, access to resources, and vulnerability. Here we are talking about all the groups that we can ever think of in a community. And therefore, the impact should be felt by all of them. Not only that, who makes the decisions? Who are the gatekeepers? Who are the people who say, let's do this or let's not do this? Because by the end of the day, we will need to see what works for all. Workload distribution has everything to do with the law, yes. Access to resources and vulnerability. Here we are talking about mostly the people with the disabilities, mostly the people who are naturally tend to be excluded, and their resource access. Are they able to access resources before the project came and after the project has already been installed? Are they still able to access? Decision making, power relation. Are these people included in how things happen in your community? And have you included their views, despite the fact that many times there are some people who are viewed as the ones who have more power than others. For example, when we look at men and women, for example, when we look at a family decision making, people with disability, people who need support versus people who have no disability, children versus adults, who owns the power, who calls the shots. So they all need to be part of, and IFund is very keen on that. what are the steps or the process they have been suggesting to be used in whenever they are overseeing development and doing impact assessment of the environment. They ensure you start by screening and risk classification. You identify potential gender differentiated risks. And here we are not just talking about women, we are talking about any marginalized group. May they be children, may they be women, may they be people with disability or otherwise. Then they also suggest that you must have a baseline gender assessment where you collect gender disaggregated data, and then gender focused scoping. Here you identify project components that need a gender lens, and then inclusive stakeholder engagement. Here you conduct women, youth, indigenous people, and all other groups that need to be brought to focus so that everybody is included. Then we have gender differentiated impact assessment, how projects will be handled differently to avoid vulnerability and to avoid leaving some groups out of the equation. Then we have gender responsive mitigation. Here we ensure equitable compensation. Then we have gender integrated ESMP with a gender action plan. Here we are talking about how you assess and come up with an action plan that includes the gender theory, where you include anybody who is marginalized, and we look at specific actions and indicators that will show they are factored in. Then we have gender sensitive M&E. Here we are expected to track gender sensitive outcomes and ensure women plus means all the other groups are in participation or take place or take action. They are part of whatever mitigation measures, whatever decisions that will be brought on board. Then we have capacity building, bring awareness, creation for the people involved, give them skills on how to manage life with the project in place so that you sort them. Then we have continuous adaptation and learning. Here we say you need to share best practices, documentation of lessons, and improvement of gender practices. Here we are talking about whenever now everything has settled, the project has been installed and the impact has been done and the compensations have been done, the continuous adaptation and learning is very important to smoothen things, to see are there gaps, is there something we forgot, what are the best practices, how can we ensure lessons are being put and they are being plowed back for learning to happen and for improvement to happen. And these concerns are looked at with a gender lens. Then why should we do EIA? Why should we? Positive impact of conducting EIA on marginal groups where women, indigenous people, and everybody else is included. One, conducting a high-quality EIA has significant positive impacts for women, for men, indigenous people, people with disability, because of inclusion. It is done intentionally. You plan for it. It helps to identify risk early, prevent harm, and ensure that development benefits each marginalized group. Then policymakers, they conduct it so that they reduce social risks, strengthen inclusion, prevent discrimination, and improves project stability. It ensures that all groups, especially indigenous people, people with disability, and all of those are protected and taken care of as development takes place. Key benefits, strengthens protection of rights. Everybody has rights, so their rights are protected when you conduct a very good EIA, and it improves participation and voice. Where the EIA process requires meaningful, accessible, and culturally appropriate consultations. When you do that, then you get good results. It identifies differential impacts, where EIA helps reveal how projects affect groups differently. But when you do all those kind of steps, then you will ensure everybody is taken care of, because their different concerns are taken care of. Promotes inclusive and equitable project design. Here we are talking about ensuring infrastructure, services, and project benefits are accessible to every other group, especially people with the disability, the indigenous. We have the universal design. We can talk of the universal design because everybody needs to be included. Then when it also promotes respect of indigenous knowledge systems, cultural practices, and customary institutions. Here we are talking about the old ways of doing things, the customs, the cultures, and everything else included. So they are promoted when you conduct a good EIA. Enhances social safeguards and risk mitigation. EIA conducted well helps prevent the following: loss of cultural heritage sites, involuntary resettlement, exclusion from benefits, environmental degradation affecting indigenous livelihoods, safety risks that particularly affect people with disability. Strong safeguards leads to reduced conflict, grievances, and social inequality. It ensures better monitoring and accountability. Contributes to sustainable and just development. I put in so many of these so that we can learn, because I'll share the slides. But last but not least, it helps inclusive design, where you ensure marginal groups can benefit from and contribute to development activities. In short, there is everybody on the table. Decision making is done by all, and benefits are consider everybody. They take care of everybody's concerns as you do your development, as you compensate, and as you make sure the environment also remains safe.
Thank you for watching.